Hello there, everyone. I am your German snob, and I welcome you all back to what will be the last episode of Let's Play the Path. And now that we are done with the 6 sisters that are the playable characters in this game, there is one more to be unlocked, which, as you can see, is the girl in white, which, well, she has shown, or, well, we've seen her playing as the other characters, but we haven't got to play as her ourselves yet, so this she is our last playable protagonist. So I can't wait to see what her version of the path is going to be all about. So once again we witness the obligatory loading screen and the obligatory introduction, I guess you could say. With the slight difference that now it's raining. And I'm sorry, once again I have to make the sound just a slight bit quieter, so... Well, otherwise I can't hear myself talk. And that would be terrible, like... What would I be if I couldn't listen to myself talk? My life would be so much poorer for it. What am I even talking about? Nothing particularly sensible. Anyway. Point is, here we are once again on the path. It's raining. Playing as the other characters, we have always started off in a... well, on a sunny morning. But not now. I'm fairly certain in saying that the rain effect will get old pretty soon. But that's okay. Talking about things that have gotten old. As you can hear, the distinctive soundtrack that was playing in the background for the other girls is, well, conspicuously absent for the girl in white. And as you can also see, we have a map on which the specific landmarks show up. I think it was a very deliberate choice to make navigating the terrain easier for the girl in white. There is something else about her which I'm sure will see sooner or later that is different to the other playable characters. But we're gonna get to that. Now what I'm wondering is, can we interact with things? Oh, and as you can see, the map also shows up more frequently. So that's fine. I do not actually think that she can interact with objects. So there may not be much of a point in exploring the woods as her. I also think that she doesn't have a wolf to encounter. So, what I believe we should do instead is trying to get back to the path, because that is something that the girl in white can do, unlike the other ones, at least as far as I would be aware. As you can see, here it is again, the path. So maybe in her case we will just follow it. Not actually stray off the path, but follow it to its end, to grandmother's house. And if the map is to be trusted, I'm running into the wrong direction, and that's a shame. Because that won't get us anywhere. Can't do that. As I said, in that way she is very different to the other characters. And if I was to interpret that fact, that she doesn't lose the way as easily as what might be her sisters or might not be her sisters, who knows? maybe that shows that she is more confident in where she has to go, in what her destination is. While the other ones might not have that knowledge yet, might yet have to grow up a bit further until they can be really sure of it. As I always thought, or what I always thought rather, is that the girl in white represents in some way the concept of innocence, seeing how she just always seemed to be out of reach of for the younger girls. But that might not be right after all. Maybe she represents maturity or something of that sort. I can't say for sure. But what I can say is that we, in her case, got to grandmother's house fairly unscathed. That we haven't encountered a wolf of any kind. So the question that remains is, what is inside the house for her? She does approach it much more confidently than the other ones. Sounds like we finally got some music. Well, that does look like an awful lot like, I think it was Ginger's version of the house. And I'm not quite sure about that. What I can say for sure is that they all seem to be representations of some of the other girls' features of the house. It seems to combine all that we have found, playing as the other characters. But the question is, where does it end? What are we going towards? Well, of course, we are going towards grandmother's bed. And the wolf in there, well, it's just a stuffed one. And that was the path. Ending, well, where else could it end? Next to grandmother's bed. Apparently there were items to discover, even as the girl in white. But what can I say that was the epilogue? What can I take from that? Well, I won't claim that I have this game figured out, because really I don't. I can only make guesses. What I believe is that the girl in white might be the actual, well, in the world of the game, the actual real characters, where the others just represent specific aspects of her personality, or stages of her life, or something of that sort. Some of the other motifs that I have found throughout the game were things like coming to terms with your own mortality. And if you've paid attention in the last scene just now, there was a certain implication that grandmother might have died, or maybe dead at the point where we have found her in her bed. For example, the pills lying next to her bed. Once again, if you paid attention, if you've seen them. Which I think was kind of going throughout the whole game, with there being a lot of significant items and locations connected to the concept of death, like of course the graveyard and the dead bird and maybe that what was implied to be a ghost over the lake. So that was certainly in there. The whole thing about growing up, of course, was also very obvious. And as I probably already said, the loss of innocence. And now that we find the girl in white again, her white clothes are bloodstained. Where the blood came from, well, we don't know, but if anything, it ties once again into the concept of a loss of innocence, the concept of staining yourself, dirtying yourself. As I said, it's not quite transparent what the overall message of the game is. But I do think that there are a lot of very clear and very, well, at least pretty obvious motifs in there that are at the very least interesting to think about. And if I had to describe this game with a word, I think interesting would be it. It was interesting, and it was quite clear to me at least that the makers of this game were, in one way or the other, pretty talented. There is a pretty impressive sense of visual composition in there, and a sense of pretty good sound design. And if anything, I would kind of like to see them work on a game that utilizes that talent in a slightly more video gamey way, to say that much. Because as it is now, it is pretty much just an art project. Not really the kind of game that you can properly consider a video game in the classic sense. And what I'm saying is, what I would kind of enjoy is if they put their talent to use for something with a bit more player input. I think that's why I'm going there. Something that puts the gamer or the player rather, in a somewhat less passive role. Personally, I'm thinking something of a more straightforward. Something a bit closer to a sort of survival horror game, or something along the way of, say, Silent Hill, that can still have the focus on symbolism and the focus on visual storytelling through small details where the interpretation is left to the player, but also provides a sort of challenge, a sort of more linear, straightforward experience that can be treated as an actual game, with a more definitive beginning, middle, and end. Because I think if they did that, they could come up with something that is pretty good. Just in terms of visual storytelling, because that's obviously something they have figured out pretty well. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. So that was The Path. Now that I'm done with that, I'm going to return to Cheese String, I suppose. Because it is something that I kind of want to finish. So I hope you enjoyed this. And I hope to be seeing you again next time. And until then, well, I am your German snob. This was Let's Play The Path, and I'll be seeing you. Ciao.